It must be Thursday. Welcome to Learning Unwrapped, the talk show about your most important life skill. So excited to be here today. We are going to have a fabulous conversation about women in the economy and a particular angle of women in the economy. So I'll get to that. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, who is as many of you know, I am the president of IDE Corp. We are an educational consulting firm. We focus on innovating instruction. And Shanae is the director of educational equity there. So please welcome Shanae Buford.
Hello.
Hello, Shanae. And Shanae is coming to us from northern, it's not northern Florida. It's really west.
It's the west.
It's western Florida. It's just north of me. But
right.
In another week, you're going to be down here with me and we're going to be hanging out on the beach.
Yes, working, loving all that stuff. I cannot wait. It's been like, what, a year and a half?
I know. It's been crazy. So tell me about something you learned.
Oh, look, it's my mom. She says hello.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom.
Hilarious. I love my family. Thanks for the support.
It's a wonderful.
So this week I have learned about, a lot of things. Surrounding yourself with great team members only continues to elevate my own thinking and my own process, and as we're learning and designing. So that's always a plus. And then, patience is a virtue.
I saw a wonderful little meme. It was a dog looking at its dog bowl, all sad like, and there was a skunk in the dog bowl. And it said, 2 greatest qualities in life, patience and wisdom.
Yes.
I thought that was a good one. All right, let's get to our guests. Our first guest is the Associate Director at the Institute of Gender and the Economy at the Rotman School of Management, University of Toronto. She has held successfully senior roles in the nonprofit sector, including work as a gender auditor for international development organizations. She holds a master's degree in women and gender studies and is committed to helping organizations, governments, and individuals solve complex gender challenges through insights from academic research. Nice. Please welcome Allison Colon.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello, coming to us from Toronto.
That's right. Yeah, it's finally sunny here in Toronto.
Ooh, nice. How you doing, Allison?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, so tell us something that you learned this week.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting thing, guys, but I started taking an accounting course. So, I'm approaching middle age and I realized that I really do not understand the fundamentals of accounting. So the course started this week and it's been a couple of light bulb moments for me, just realizing, this is how it works. So it's been helpful. It's not thrilling, but it is helpful.
Be careful.
I love that. Taking a course just because you're like, I have a gap in my knowledge right now.
Yeah, a big one.
Course to fill it. That's cool.
Thanks. It's a wonderful thing. Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to bring in our next guest, who is the president and founder of Develop Africa. Sylvester received the Humanitarian Leadership Award from the National Organization of Sierra Leoneans in North America for his longstanding commitment and untiring efforts in helping and mentoring Sierra Leoneans. He received the African International Achievers Award in 2012, and that is the largest social impact awards of, by, and about Africa, highlighting the greatest champions of social progress by nonprofits, socially conscious businesses, and individuals worldwide. Sylvester was born in and grew up in Sierra Leone, and then he came to the United States and in 1998 completed his MBA at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. But I think he's coming to us from Tennessee. We'll check that out for sure. Please welcome Sylvester Renner.
Hello, everybody. So happy to be here with you.
And are you from Tennessee?
Yes, I'm in the northeast corner of Tennessee, Johnson City, Tennessee.
All right.
Okay. Very cool. So tell us, Sylvester, what's something that you've learned this week?
Yeah, I've learned, this is really like relearning something I learned before, that two people may have opposing views on the same topic. It's like almost like, is the coin, which does the coin have two sides? And that's like something we've even experienced politically, where like two people will be absolutely convinced that they are right, and then it's like, who's really right? It's really depending on perspective, which really teaches us that we have to be humble in our approach to life, realizing that we may not see the entire story. So that's something I've really learned this week.
I love that, because really, is there such a thing as truth? Well, that should be another show.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get our third guest in here to get our conversation started. Claire is Resonance Country Director. She is responsible for leading the organization's operations in Rwanda. And the organization that she is part of is Resonate Workshops. She served as a mentor for the Bridge to Rwanda program, where she mentored young women before they go to college in the U.S. Aspiration of hers is to live in a world where women and girls believe in their dreams, raise their voices without fear, and run successful businesses. Please welcome Claire Uaniza.
Hey.
Hey, Claire.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, Claire.
It's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for joining us from Rwanda, where it's actually time for you to go to bed.
It's a pleasure. It's something that I care about, so happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell us, Claire, what's something that you learned this week?
Yeah, last week I learned a lot. Actually, we have at Resonate, we have a value that is called keep learning. So every time I'm constantly learning. And one of the things that I learned last week was there is this quote that says, at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you made, it's about how many lives you touched. And that was a moment for me to kind of like look back at like how many people have I touched. So yeah, that was my learning.
Wonderful.
I love that. I love that.
That's awesome.
We need to remember that, especially, those of us who are in businesses and we're like, all right, we've got to bring in the money. We got to make the sale. And every now and then you got to stop and say like, wait, what did I affect this week? Whose lives did I touch? So it's a wonderful thing. Someone asked me about the show and making money. And I'm like, we don't make money on this show. This isn't a monetized effort. This is just, let's talk about social issues around the world. I love it. And let's talk about learning. And so I would like to welcome our live audience. The show is recorded and then it is streamed on a number of channels across the world. But we love having our live audience here with us. So welcome to the live audience. Any of you who are watching live with us now, please know you're probably watching through either Facebook or YouTube. And there is a chat, and you are welcome to put any of your comments and questions in the chat. If you have a question for a particular guest, just put it in there with their name so we know to get it to the right person. Otherwise, feel free to just give us questions for everybody. All right, so let me give you the background. The year is 2010. Yeah, I think it was 2010. And I wanted to start an art gallery. And in thinking about starting the art gallery and, what would the theme be, et cetera, I had read the book Half the Sky. And its title comes from a phrase, or a sentence actually, women hold up half the sky. And the whole point is that in many countries, and particularly in developing countries, and in our own country years ago, women were not considered to be part of the workforce. That was the place that men go, and women stay home and raise the kids and, clean the house and cook and do all of that kind of stuff that my mother did. And obviously what we've learned is that women are about half the population and maybe even more. And if you cut out half of the population of your country from the workforce, you're gonna have a really hard time having a strong economy. We need women in the workforce, for the economies of the countries, but also we need women in the workforce so that they can be self-sustaining and that they are not dependent on anyone and that they can follow their dreams wherever their dreams want to take them. So I started an art gallery called the She Gallery, SHE, which stood for Supporting Human Equality. And we donated part of our profits to organizations. And actually care.org was one of the organizations that we supported, which was all about helping women enter the economy. And so this is a topic that is dear to my heart. So I appreciate you're all coming. And let's let the audience get a little bit of a better picture of your perspective. So when we think, because you're all coming from different avenues of working with girls and women. So just give a little bit of a background of the work that you're doing and how your work is helping women impact economies. So Sylvester, let's start with you from Develop Africa.
Thank you, Nancy, so much for the wonderful work and your commitment to helping women. With Develop Africa, we've been focusing primarily on education, and we've also, within education, we're really focusing on girls' education. Just as we've mentioned, girls globally, but even more so in Africa, have traditionally been at a disadvantage in terms of their access to opportunities. So we've made sure to prioritize making tuition assistance, books, school supplies, helping to lower the barrier so that girls can be able to stay in school, because in situations where the parent has to choose between a boy or a girl, who are they going to send to school? If they say, well, I've only got money to send my boy to school, and the girl, you would have to wait because we don't have enough money now. So that's why we focus on making sure there won't be any reason for the girls to drop out of school. So we're really thankful for what we've been able to do there. Just being able to make sure that they do have equal access to educational opportunities, because we know that foundation will take them very far in terms of what they will be able to accomplish their dreams and how they'll be able to impact their families and society.
Ooh, I love that. Like, education is that thing that we can all take with us, that someone can't take away from you, that you really help make an impact in the world. So setting that equal footing, that equity of education is so paramount to so many things. So I love that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Allison, tell us about your perspective that you'll bring to the conversation.
Sure. So I'm at the Institute for Gender and the Economy at the University of Toronto, and we're a research institute. So we fund research, academic research, and we translate it for a broad audience of policymakers, business leaders, and community members. So my perspective is really focusing on what the research has to tell us about women and all genders, including men and non-binary folks, and how they interact with the economy, and how we can make changes in our organizations and our structures and our policies in order for everybody to access the economy in all of its forms, in the ways that help them live their best lives and help them be fruitful and have good incomes and all the good things that they deserve.
Great.
So
Love it.
Yeah, I think one thing, in your opening remarks, Nancy, that stands out to me is when we think about women and the formal economy, we kind of overlook that, the work that they're doing in the house is also work. And so I think one of the perspectives I'd love to talk about today is the importance of care work and recognizing care work, even though it may not contribute to GDP in a traditional way, it is definitely work. And so, kind of breaking open our ideas about what economic contributions look like. So a lot of women may not be formally paid, but they may be either doing reproductive labor, so cleaning and cooking and raising children, contributing to their community through volunteering. And I think that's a really important aspect in this kind of conversation about women's contributions.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely, don't let me just gloss over it, that everybody belongs in the workforce.
Absolutely.
Because I love my mom. She's passed. I wear her thumbprint around my neck. But my mom was a homemaker, and she's what kept us together. And of course, when you look at society, there's a social side and an economic side, and they blend together. And so we'll definitely make sure we talk about that. All right,
Awesome.
Claire, give us your perspective. Give us a little bit about what the work that you're doing at Resonate and how that is helping women make an impact on the economy.
Perfect. Yeah. So at Resonate, first, we believe that women and girls, they have the power and the potential to lead the change that they want to see in their lives and in their community. But because of the confidence gap that is defined as women feeling less self-assured than men, that leads to them missing opportunity, economically speaking and socially speaking. So, and we know that as much as competence is needed, like on the labor market, confidence is also needed to be able to secure jobs. So I resonate. We've developed short leadership training that allows women and girls to see themselves as leaders, to see themselves as agents of change. And when we say leaders, we don't only mean those who are in the formal position, but we define leadership as being proactive in the face of a challenge. There's a challenge in your community, you do something about it. Either you speak or you advocate for that challenge to be solved. And I love this saying that if you empower a woman, you empower community. And it's true. I'll probably give an example of one of our participants called Odette, who came to our training. And Odette is a mom, is a mother of 4 children. She was married to an abusive husband. And later on, the husband even left her when their second baby was malnourished. And you can imagine a single mom trying to raise 4 children by herself. It was hard, making sure they get school fees, making sure they're fed, making sure that she pays rent. But everything changed when she, like her turning point was when she attended Resonate Storytelling for Leadership, that she realized that she can be proactive. She can start small and tackle her challenges. At the end of the workshop, she felt confident to take care of her family. And she started a business of selling soap. And at the end, like right now, Odette can afford to send her children to school. She can afford to feed them. She can afford rent. And she did not stop there. She went on to in her community, identify women like her who felt the same way as she was feeling before. And she shared her story as a way to inspire them. And later on, they created a saving group. Like from there, you can see, like it didn't stop from her. She went on to help others. And that leads to economic benefits, such as poverty reduction and community development. So I totally agree that once a woman is empowered, the whole community benefits.
I love that. It's like that ripple we talked about in one of our work meetings, probably like a week or 2 ago. Nancy shared this image. But that's that ripple effect of she didn't just stop with my life has been changed, but now how can I go out and impact those of the lives around me who then open up their own ripples. And so then that's how you really start to get that lasting change, which is kind of what I'm hearing from all 3 of you is now do we not just change the individual, but change the individual intrinsically, that they then start making that impact, and then the ripples are felt from their change to somebody else. So there's definitely power in that for sure.
And I'm looking at the statement that Erica made here. This idea of financial independence and confidence are key to supporting women in situations of domestic violence. Let's say, why do we even need to talk about equality with women and women in the workforce? And like, why, what exists in our world that has made, put women in the position of inequality? I know you're going to look at me like, well, that's a silly.
Allison's like, all the research.
I want to talk about it. Like, how did we get here? I don't know that we got there. Like, how did we, like, why are we fighting for women to be able to be part of an economy and self-sustaining?
Wow.
Ahead,
Thanks for the softball question, Nancy. How did we get here? I guess from my perspective, I guess I can't go right back to the beginning, but I can say that I think a lot of our biases are built into our institutions right now. And so, in order for us to actually, make some changes, we do need to change some of the structures. And I think Shanae was mentioning that was my perspective. So I'm thinking, for example, just some examples. Claire mentioned this confidence gap, and that's definitely a factor. And I think for many decades, women were being coached on, how to ask for a raise and how to speak up and how to fit in. And what the research shows is that there's really a double bind for women. So when they speak up in meetings, their behavior is coded as aggressive. And when they don't speak up, they're seen as passive. And so they're really penalized either way. And so what we need some structural changes, at least within the organizations that we're looking at here in Canada and North America. So one thing that we do for the confidence gap, one of our researchers, they did a study where they changed their promotional structure within an organization from an opt-in structure, which is a traditional structure where you post a job posting and people apply, to an opt-out. So anyone who is qualified for that role is immediately considered. And they found that doing that completely closed the gender gap in promotions, because women are less likely to put themselves forward for a role. But a man, even if he doesn't have the qualifications, is more likely to put himself forward. And so those are the types of interventions that, at least with our organization, we're trying to promote them so that we can create some of those structures so women don't have to do all the heavy lifting themselves and try and change their personalities in a system that really is going to penalize them no matter what they do.
Wow.
I read, and we'll go back to it later, but I read an article that you wrote with Sarah Kaplan called Facing Down the Backlash. And in it, you talk about innovation for inclusion.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a company that is innovating. It's not about, we want to make sure we have X percentage of women, but it's like, let's innovate and do something different. And you also had talked about a group, the Symphony. What was the name of that? Jump Gap? What was it?
Honestly, I can't remember the name, which is terrible.
Wait, I have it here. Gap Jumpers. They did blind symphony auditions. And once they did that, where they were not looking at the people auditioning, there was a spike in the number of women who were ended up being in the symphony.
Yeah.
Because now we just saw the director pop in.
What is Boy doing?
Are you guys having a party back there? But that I didn't look. I'm not looking at the private chat. So Shanae, I'll let you handle that. Is there an issue going on? We have to take care of?
He just popped in.
Okay,
He just said sorry.
So like, we love our directors. They make everything happen. So anytime they want to pop in, they're welcome. Anyway, I lost my total train of thought. Let's just move.
No, I think that's a great example, because innovation doesn't have to necessarily mean expensive. That was literally just putting up a curtain so that you were trying to reduce some of the impact of the bias of the hiring committee in that particular instance. And so we were really judging the individual on merit. And we're starting to see a lot of organizations do this with job postings. So they're trying to neutralize some of the language in their job postings so it's not so gendered. And then in some cases, when people apply, they're actually removing names and trying to remove some of the identifiers so that a hiring committee can, look at that resume without so much bias coming in, although it does sneak in no matter what. But these are the kinds of, little interventions that organizations are making to try and level the playing field a little bit so that our individual biases don't impact on some of these decisions like they do.
And I feel like, and speaking of in organizations, like for instance, my organization, we need to think differently about how we interview. The funny thing we always say in my company, it's women owned. It's like most of the people in the company are women. We're in the field of education. There's a lot of women in that field. And I always joke that the only person who had to break the glass ceiling was Boyd, who popped in a little while ago, because he is the only gentleman who is on our leadership team.
Right.
So we kind of joke about that. But even in terms of, we've been working a lot on recruiting a more diverse workforce. And I think along those lines, anyone who applies for a position who is qualified, we have minimum standards, have to have a master's degree, have to have 5 years experience. So all of them are invited to a group interviews. And then during the group interview, and then what it has done is it allowed us to really draw from a much bigger pool than trying to look at resumes and weed out people. It's like, just bring everybody in
And a lot of organizations will say that there's a pipeline problem and that we tried to hire diverse candidates, but nobody applied. And so really it's on organizations to be creative and to maybe change the way that they're talking about those roles, and also look at their own organizations internally and see if it's a welcome environment for diverse individuals. Because if somebody's looking at your company culture and they're saying, I'm not going to fit in, or they're not seeing representation on your website, or they're seeing language in the job posting that signals to them, that there's a bro culture, for example. I heard we did a panel today at Gate that was talking about women in data science. And, one of the panelists was saying that a lot of companies like to talk about the roles as ninja. That's not going to appeal necessarily to everyone. So I think these are, organizations really have to think about, how they're presenting themselves. And then once they've hired, what is the culture like inside? And is it actually a comfortable place for people to work? And, in most cases, it's not. And there's a lot of changes that are needed.
And having nothing to do with our discussion, but I'm proud to say that IDE, my company, was just noted by Inc. magazine as being one of the best places to work.
Congratulations.
It's a good stuff.
But
awesome.
Sylvester, talk to us about the work you're doing and what is holding back women and girls in Africa.
Happy to discuss that. I think a lot of from my experience, what we observed is, as I mentioned at the start, the playing field is not level. So in terms of access to opportunities, it's not equal. So girls are being disadvantaged. They're dropping out of school at a higher rate. And so what we've tried to do is to focus on helping them. So, but beyond that, we've also tried to see how we can help the families, because the families came back to us and said, thank you for helping us with scholarships, with the books and school supplies, but we would love to be in a position where we're empowered and we're able to take better care of our families. And so that's what we've also started to do, is to say, talk to the families and find out how can we help? And in many instances, they've said to us, if we could start a side business or even grow our business, then we'd be able to be more financially stronger. We'd be in a better position to be able to feed our kids, provide transportation for them, cover their medical and all the other expenses that go along with raising a family. So that's one of the things we're very thankful for, where we've been focusing not just on giving them short-term assistance, but seeing how we can transition them to where they're stronger, they're more empowered. And we've been focusing primarily on empowering women, providing microfinance loans in that regard.
It's wonderful.
I love that. I think there's power in because what I'm hearing you say is not so much like the transaction of let's help them get the scholarship to get to that next thing, but you also have to shift the mindset in like, how do we go forward for the next generation after us to continue, building up this, whether it's our business, making sure that we are in a position to, it's important that all of our kids go to school. And so it's really, not just a transaction of let me send send my other child to school or send my daughter to school, but also it's important. What are we going to put in so that we can be sustaining for ourselves, so that we know that, my daughter's daughter will not have to cycle back through what we just went through too. So it's like a mindset to really think about, which is what I heard you and what Claire's talking about too, that ripple, the mindset. We're shifting a culture, not just a singular instance.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And if I can talk a bit more about that, there's one particular lady who I'd like to share and talk about. Her name is Olivet. And so as a single parent, she was struggling to take care of her family, and food and clothing were a challenge, a single mother and trying to take care of her kids. And primary to our involvement, she basically said, it's difficult to survive and things were hard. She didn't have the funds to start a business, and her meager salary wasn't able to meet her, take care of her family as a single parent. So we provided microfinance loan to her, and where she was able to open up a shop, which you can see pictured, and she sells a variety of items that you can see are scribbled on the door. And she's now able to feed her kids, to give them bus fare to go to school, take care of other necessities. And that's a picture of me with her. This was back in 2019 with her son, Frederick. when I was there in 2019, of course, before the pandemic. So we're very thankful that even though things aren't perfect for her right now, she acknowledges there's still hiccups, trying to make sure she has a constant demand, but she's in a much better place right now. And she said directly, she's able to take care of her kids in dignity, peace, and respect. And I think that's just huge, because that's what we're trying to empower them, to get them to that point. And we're thankful for the progress we're making.
And that's what you do through your microloans, yes?
Yes, correct.
So if we could just bring up that website, if any of you are interested in supporting Sylvester and his efforts, you can actually donate to help support some of the microloans and the education to support the children as well.
And that's so connected to what Claire was sharing earlier too about, there's that confidence piece. And so now all of it is not just gotten her business, but the confidence to know I can do this. I feel empowered to do this. So it's, yes, the money and starting the business is important too. But I think another side of that is I now have the confidence to know that I can make this thing happen. It's not going to be easy by any means, but I now feel at peace in a position that I am. So that confidence and empowerment that Claire was sharing earlier, like it's super important so that it does become a transformation and not just a transaction of here's some money, start this business, and then, nothing happens from it. So.
And
Absolutely.
part of the work that we do in schools is design classrooms where students are learning through solving real world problems. So it's not about, let me teach you all this content and then we'll apply it to something. It's like, let's start with a problem. What do you think you need to learn in order to solve the problem? And then the kids dive into it and they have what I call a felt need to learn, so that they eventually solve the problem. And that's where that leads to efficacy. I saw Marianne, one of our consultants, put up the word efficacy. And I was in a school, so we're going to give a shout out to Randolph, New Jersey, because I was in a school in Randolph, New Jersey, and there was a 4th grade student. And she said, we solve so many real world problems that I know I'm only in 4th grade, but I think I could change the world. And that was like my heart, because we have a motto that says we partner with schools to position students to change the world. So when you hear a student say that, it's like, yes. So how do we spread that idea? How do we empower more women to believe that they can change the world no matter what they choose to do? And Allison, I'm going to jump back to you, because I promised I'd give you time to talk about the fact that women don't have to be going off to the office to be contributing to the economy.
Well, maybe I think I gave some slides. Maybe I can use those to kind of as a foray into this conversation. So one thing that happened when the pandemic hit was that we really saw some of the gaps in our economy around childcare. Particularly, we saw a lot of women leaving the workforce. Most of the times, if they were in heterosexual couples, they were the lower income earners, so it was a financial decision. And then you had schools closing, daycares closing, and because of our social roles, our traditional roles, a lot of women took on a burden of childcare, and so we saw a lot of women leaving the economy. So one of the things that we're hoping to see as we're trying to build back after the pandemic is to see a real investment in care work. And we're hoping that will not just only allow women to re-enter the formal workforce if they choose to, but we also realize how much we undervalue care work in our economy right now. So these tend to be precarious jobs. They're low paying. A lot of women, mostly women, work in the childcare sector and the elder care sector as well. And so now we're finally seeing that as a society, we're realizing that we really need these essential jobs in order for our economy to function, right? So when the pandemic hit, we really saw women drop right out of the workforce. So in Canada, our federal government just announced a huge commitment. They're going to give $30 billion over the next 5 years to build a nationwide childcare structure. We're very, very optimistic and very, very hopeful that this will allow women to have choices, to choose to re-enter the formal work sector if they choose, to stay at home if they choose, and that also will create great jobs for people who are doing childcare work.
That's shout out for Canada.
Yeah.
Love it.
Great
Love it.
work.
It's awesome.
For sure. I want to, I know we're like at 5:35, Nancy's, but I'm going to ask my question fast.
All
I
right.
know. So I just wanted Claire to kind of expand a little bit upon this concept of, empowering women. How is it that, why is it important that we build this confidence in women and in young girls? Like, what is that lasting impact?
Yeah, it's important because we all know that women are the majority of the population globally. That's the same case in Rwanda. So if they're left behind already, we are missing something, whether it be in terms of like the economy, in terms of the talent, if we talk about the labor force, in terms of like the social. So it's really important. And of course, the new generation, at least our generation, we are lucky to be living in a country, at least Rwanda. It promotes women. It gives opportunity to women. And now, because of course our parents, they didn't have that chance. There's something that they wish they could do, but they couldn't do. But for us, we have those opportunities. Now the point is, how do we make sure that we take advantage of all those opportunities that are around us, and how do we support each other? Especially for the young people, we have this program that is called Action Leadership, that is focusing on building leadership skills and resilience and the problem solving for the young girls at young age. So we first, of course, teach them how to understand that they're leaders, but then also remind them that they don't have to get that old to start making a change. They can even start at young age. And what we do, we teach them how to do like community projects. So they go through our training and we ask them to go back in their community and come back with identify challenges and come back with a solution. And we guide them on how do you plan community projects? How do you involve the local leaders or the people in your community? And that is one way of making sure that at least the young people, they grow up with that mindset of I'm capable, even though I'm a girl, like my gender shouldn't define what I can do and what I cannot do. And that should be like spread in the community. So I think it's really important to do with the young people, but also with the older people, making sure that it's hard to unlearn what they have learned over the years, but with the right tool, with the right methodology, I think we can get there.
I love that. Connected to our work, Nancy, of like, go out there, find the problem, find the people, and
Solve it.
make it happen.
Make it happen. I always say there is two kinds of people in this world. There are people to whom life happens, who are stuck saying, well, there was nothing I could do. It happened to me. And there are people who make life happen. And I believe that the greatest gift that we can give a kid is efficacy, the ability to make it happen. No matter what happens to me, I can figure it out. I can find a way. We even saw that through the pandemic when students are working at home. And I know schools now are talking about the fact that there may be learning gaps and what students have learned and what they haven't learned. And we talk a lot about the fact even that the work that we do is all about academic resilience, that students the students that were in the classrooms we had designed, they just went home and learned. It was like, oh, we're home now? Okay, I'm still solving that problem. I'm still into it. I'm still, following my activity list that the teacher gave me as opportunities to learn. The teachers are still curating the instruction. And so how do we build that academic resilience that I can continue to learn no matter what happens? And how do we build that life resilience that, I can get through this no matter what happens?
For sure.
All right. But you did bring up that it is time for what's in your mug tonight. My mug is a ceramic mug given to me by a dear friend, Rowena McNulty. Thank you very much, Rowena. And it is all of these women dancing happily, and it reminded me of women holding up half the sky. So that's what I am. That's my mug, and I am drinking one of my favorite organic mind, body, and soul coffees. So
love it.
Let's see. Allison, what is in your mug?
Yeah, so it's not a very exciting mug. It's just from IKEA. But what's inside is tea that I made from mint leaves that I just grew myself this year. I got into gardening during the pandemic.
Ooh.
So I wanted to give a shout out to this seed company that's in Vancouver Island, BC. It's called
Hold it up a little bit more.
Ravensong Seeds Herbal, and their website is here, ravensongherbals.com. I've had a couple orders from them. They have a lovely variety of kind of natural and not natural, but local seed varieties, and they're really great. So I wanted to promote them a little bit.
And again, so our director can put it up, it's Ravensong.
Ravensongherbals.com.
Raven.
I'll put it in the chat.
All right, that sounds good. Put it in the chat. The director will put it up. And that's pretty cool. So now you're growing your own tea leaves.
It's the best.
I love that. And you know, Allison, you didn't have to say it was just a plain old mug from IKEA. You know, because it was glass. There is a transparent part of it that you could have built. You could have built something around that.
Funny.
Man.
Just a thought. All right, Claire, what's in your mug?
Yes, it's coffee from one of the, can I say, best coffee farmer in Kigali. They're called Question Coffee. It's this is coffee made by women. So I support women. So that I give a shout out to Question Coffee through their work with the sustainable growers.
That's wonderful.
And this is a cup that was given to me on my birthday last year. So really love the mug.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, awesome.
And Claire, if you would put in the chat the name of the coffee company you were giving a shout out to, our director will put up that as well. And Sylvester, what's in your mug?
My mug is just a Develop Africa mug, as you can see.
Very nice. I like that.
Yep. It's got the logo on it, and these are available if you're interested in purchasing one from the website. And I'm just drinking coffee. I'm drinking coffee, herbal chestnut flavor, golden hazelnut flavor, and it's from a woman-owned company here in the US. She's originally from Africa, Golden Made Cafe, KAFE.com. So it's wonderful coffee, and I'm enjoying that in my mug right now.
Can you put that in the chat too? And then our director will bring it up. Lauren, I'm gonna have you bring up all of those at the end of our coffee segment or our tea segment. And Shanae, what's in your mug?
I love that everyone's like, I support my local coffee folks. So I am drinking out of my favorite Florida State University Tervis cup, and I am from the South. I am from the South, so I drink sweet tea. Ain't no other tea unless it's sweet. Rot your teeth out tea, not the northern version of sweet tea.
Hey.
My Southerners know. My Southerners know.
That is true. Sweet
Sylvester's in Tennessee. He knows the sweet tea.
It's different.
It is different. You got to be ready for it.
But Shanae, you missed my joke in there. When you held it up, I said, "Go Gators." You didn't get angry.
Yeah, I chose to ignore that.
That's
a lovely hearing.
That's subtle. Ignore that.
Yeah.
So one more time, Lauren, let's put up the names of the organizations we just gave a shout out to. Ravensongherbals.com. Go to their website. Check out what they have to offer.
Cool.
questioncoffee.com. Go to their website. Check it out.
Very cool.
And Golden Made Cafe. And check out what they have to offer as well. I'm sure all of these places allow us to buy, thank God for the internet, right? Like, what would we do without it? We couldn't have this talk show without it. It's a wonderful thing. All right, let's continue the conversation. Shanae, got a question for us?
Yes. I actually saw a question in the chat from my wonderful other boss. That's not Nancy, Tanya Bosco. Our hierarchy is, it's ever evolving.
We're all here having a good time.
Yeah, So she put up a question that, oftentimes if women are in the workforce, and they have families, and even in the stories that you all shared about single mothers having to like juggle all these things, it's always that like question, and she put in there like, how do you do it all? And it's interesting because men never get that question of how do you do it all. Even in watching like red carpet and celebrities, it's always the female actress that's like, well, how do you juggle being a mom and a work? Like, did you ask that guy? Did you ask George Clooney that? And he's got a family, you know what I mean? So it's like, how do we really, because there's a confidence thing too, because even mothers who are in the workforce, if people are asking you that, you're like, well, how am I doing a disservice to one or the other? So like, how do we go about changing that narrative that it's not about how do you do it all? Like, you're supposed to not just work, but uplift this household and everything else. But how do we really change it into we're here as a collective and not just women? You have to work, but you also still have to do all those other pieces as well. So how do we begin to kind of really change that narrative so we can start to creep out some of that self-doubt that might come up? I'm throwing it out there. I'm just throwing it to whoever wants to capture it.
I really want to talk about this.
Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
I think that we need to include men in this conversation. They need to be a part of this conversation. We need to be talking about masculinity. Just as much as these concepts of femininity and what women are expected to do in women's roles, just as much as they're restrictive for us, men's roles are restrictive for them as well. And so men often are unable to break some of those, they call it the man box, right? The restrictions that are placed on them, how they can act, how they can behave, what they can do because of society's expectations about what men will do. And so you can't have a situation where women are going to get, be able to rise up the corporate ladder and get lots of support at home if men feel like they're going to break some sort of social code by leaving their job and staying home to raise kids. So I really think we need to have men in this conversation more.
Great point.
Agree with you, Allison.
Yeah, you want to expand on that, Claire? Like, what does that look like in your world of like helping women to do that, but also making sure men are in that conversation?
Yeah, it's making sure that you have that kind of conversation. You don't have to wait until you're married to have that kind of conversation. Like even in your dating, like that's a conversation that you should be having with your partner, so that it starts early on. And of course, it needs to be even in our society, because people are afraid of the different labels that people will tag on them. So like taking the time to make it clear, or like make it it's normal for a man to do certain things. It's normal for a woman to do certain things. Like it's kind of like awareness and teaching and helping people understand that it's okay, and having those conversations. I think,
Yeah, I agree.
Speaking of men, Sylvester.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential for us to have these conversations, because as roles are being reversed and women are now in the workplace, traditionally the man was the sole breadwinner, but we're facing situations where married women are earning maybe even more possibly than their husbands are earning. And so that just disrupts an old mindset of how traditionally things are supposed to obtain. So there has to be very important conversations on, the roles and the responsibilities. And most men today will tell you that they are probably more involved in the lives of their children than maybe their fathers were. I mean, I'm doing things with my son, which I tell him periodically, like, my dad never did this. It just wasn't a thing. So I think it's all being able to learn and relearn and adjust, which is so essential, not just because of the pandemic, which is something we've really learned, but it's just going to be an ongoing thing where there has to be flexibility and the willingness to change and adapt.
I agree. And I think this starting younger too, like having these conversations with kids, it's especially, even as we work with teachers, I'm always mindful of the language, even in kindergarten, that you're using with what jobs you're having boys do in the classroom, or what jobs you're having girls do in the classroom, or are you just putting pronoun gender identity onto kids because based on traditional values, right? So it's like, even then kids start to think about, oh, well, this is my role in this classroom, this is my role out here in the world. And so I think when we really start having these conversations, showing what's possible, all of you talked about potential, that empowerment and potential, making sure all have opportunity and access. Like, those are a lot of key words that I was hearing that's so powerful in changing the narrative, because it's harder to unlearn, and it's probably going to take generations now, right? So I'm thinking about, often this is like this 1950s model, right, of like what family and responsibilities look like, and we're not that far removed, like, from that generation of people. And so it might be the generation after us that we're, continuing to make these shifts and moves.
And I think that
Yeah.
has something to do too with the development of a country. For instance, I think of that in terms of the United States being there in the 1950s. But I feel like when you look at developing economies, that they are actually tracking behind us. Am I incorrect in that?
Well, Claire, you're in Rwanda. Rwanda has some of the most impressive representation of women in leadership. I don't know. Do you feel that way?
Sorry, would you repeat your question?
Yeah.
Well, I guess just building on Nancy's question, do we don't want to necessarily think that in a developing nation that we're kind of ahead in terms of gender equity. I mean, we don't have the kind of representation in government that Rwanda does, the representation of women in leadership.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
And for complicated
Yeah,
reasons, I recognize.
It is. Rwanda is very impressive. We have big numbers in the parliament, like more than 60%. And I would say also the government has put so many policies in place that promote women, that helps women have a voice. Of course, the country is doing much, but of course, because of the culture, there is still work to be done. Of course, the country has put in place, like, now women can own, let's say, a property or like a land, which wasn't the case years back. It was only a man who could own those kind of things. But it's a process. We've made progress, but of course, there is still work to be done.
For sure. I would say the same for us. And we are developed. I feel like there's rules on the books, and then there's what actually happens when you're walking through life. Like, there's there's policies in place, but then there's the walk that you're actually going through, and there can be misalignment.
And backlash. I mean, we talk a lot at GATE about the backlash. Every time you make a step forward in diversity and inclusion, you see this huge backlash from people who have a lot of privilege, but feel like they're being disadvantaged. And we're seeing that a lot, especially right now. I remember when Sylvester, in your opening remarks, you talked about, kind of the two sides of the coin. We're really starting to see that division as we're making a lot of strides in diversity and inclusion. We're seeing a lot of people feeling disenfranchised and being very angry. And it's I mean, when you try and change these social issues, you're disrupting power balances, and it can create a lot of conflict. So, there's a lot of work to be done.
And what do we do about that? When we see that around us, it is the idea of you're putting in place policies and procedures to provide for more inclusivity, and then you have the backlash of, well, I didn't get the job because, or whatever.
Yeah.
How do we work to change that? How do we work around that?
For us, we're trying to use data. We're trying to show, what, we put a quota in, and guess what? The quality of candidates went up. It doesn't mean that, good male candidates didn't get the job. Mediocre male candidates didn't get the job. Great male candidates got the job. Great female candidates got the job. So for us, I mean, we're just trying, we're just trying to make the
Allison,
argument.
you're like, the mediocre man didn't make it, but the great and the great did. Okay.
That's it. Trying to kind of take some of those myths and take them apart. I mean, that's what we're trying to contribute to that conversation.
Well, and I think there's a quote on your website that says something, and you'll know it better than I, but something about the fact that women have to perform at the top 10% of their, do you know the quote I'm talking about? Women have
No.
to,
But go ahead.
all right, well, women have to perform at the top 10% of their,
Yeah.
colleagues in order to be considered to be performing, outperforming,
Yeah.
if you will. Whereas men only have to be at the top third of their.
Yes. Sorry,
So-
I do know that quote now.
All
And
right,
I
now
think,
you-
and if you look at the intersections, you look at women of color and indigenous women, I think it's even more of a challenge. So it's, yeah, we have a long way to go.
Right, because you have the double whammy then of race and gender that are negatively impacting your ability. And does anyone else want to add to the conversation before I move on? All right, I have one last question because I can't believe it, but I say this every week, like, I can't believe the hour's up, but our hour is up. But as we think about, we talk about the inequities and the issues, et cetera, but let's end on an assets-based approach. What is it that women have inherently? What is it that is so important about them to be elevated in our societies, in our economies, in our decision-making, et cetera? Who wants to start? And then we'll just go around. Give your final words of the night.
I think I'll go ahead and start. I think, as has been mentioned earlier, when you leave women out, you leave in half of the brain power, you leave in half of the manpower out of the economy. And from what I've learned, women bring a different perspective, and they often see things which men may never see. So it's so absolutely essential that women have a voice, that they're able to bring perspective on issues. I've learned so much just listening to different perspectives and realizing that I may think I'm right, but when I listen to somebody else, particularly a woman who is expressing herself on the same topic but from a different perspective, that there's so much more richness it brings to the conversation, and it helps us go so much further in solving the problem. So I think that's absolutely crucial for there to be openness, a willingness to learn, and it'll just help make the world so much a better place.
Agreed.
Claire, you want to give us your final thoughts on an asset-based approach?
Yeah, and I'll base on this learning that I also had last week that was saying if we increasing women employment in OECD countries to match the Sweden, it could lead to increase in GDP of over 6 trillion. Like you can imagine that, like increase, it's a lot. And that's what we are missing if we are not making sure that women are participating in the labor market or in the labor force. So I would say women that are capable, that are more, they can do more than the housework. They can do the housework, but they can do other things as well. So they have great talent, they have different talent that they bring on the table. If you give them opportunity, if you give them a voice, they will contribute to the larger development of a country, of a community, and to the well-being of the society. So let's give them voice, let's give them opportunity that they deserve.
Thank you.
Love that.
Allison, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say to women, you're perfect the way you are. Keep doing what you're doing. The system is broken and we need to fix the system so you can thrive. But everything you're doing is great and you're working really hard. Keep going.
It's awesome.
Love that.
And I'm going to ask, Director, if you would bring up Allison's intro image again. So thank you for having Allison here. Allison is the Associate Director at the Institute for Gender and the Economy at University of Toronto. I encourage you to head over to their website, Google them, find out a little bit more about what they're doing, because they're basically, and as the way you would put it, Allison, taking research and go ahead, you say the words.
We're trying to change the conversation using rigorous academic research. Yeah, please come to the site. We've got lots of great stuff on there for you.
And thank you for being here today and joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And then Claire, if we can bring up her website again, Resonate. Claire, your whole idea is you're going to help women's voices to resonate. So Resonate Workshops is where you can find Claire. Thank you so much for staying up late. You'll be able to get some sleep now and joining us from Rwanda. So I totally appreciate that. And then Sylvester. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Claire.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Great conversation.
You're very welcome. And then Sylvester, we can find you at Develop Africa. And I totally appreciate your being here as well and sharing what it is that you're doing with girls in education in Africa. So thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you for having me.
And Shanae, as always, final thoughts that you may have. I love, co-hosting with you.
I loved being back. It's been a minute. No, I feel like putting girls, women in a position to continue to thrive, to do what they do, to Allison's point, like continue to thrive and continue to, we'll break down these systems that are making it difficult for not everyone who's walking the planet to be able to thrive. It's our job to really start to break down those systems and barriers so that everyone can live the best version of themselves. So,
amen to that. And so relatedly, I think it is so important, again, building efficacy to begin education with solving real world problems. Next week on our show, I will have 3 teachers who teach through real world problems. So join us next week for teaching through real world problems. And as always, the kids of IDE show us out, and we asked our younger members, what kind of a business would they like to start if they were going to be part of the economy? And then we asked our older IDE kids to share their insights on women in the economy. So as always, they will see us off. My guests will be taken backstage, but don't log out yet so that I can come back and I can thank you appropriately.
Women can affect the economy because of their creativeness and strong will. With these powers, they can lead our economy and the worldwide economy into the future.
If I could start a business, it will be full of candy so I can give it to everybody that needs it. A dress business and an ice cream business and a jewelry business. I own a clothing store and I like to fancy people up. If I had my own company, it would be a flea market because I like a big crowd. I want to be a veterinarian because I love animals.
Women can build the world economy by expressing themselves and their differences from men.
Because the majority of students are women, and that's more college-educated people entering the workforce.
More and more women are becoming the breadwinners of their families, but women also consume products in huge amounts. Women buy products for their families, for their children, so they're a great force in the economy and should be valued as such.
Women have been underestimated and treated unequal for much too long. And by having women in the workforce, we can build the world economy by finally being given an equal opportunity to show our strength and knowledge.
Thanks for watching Learning Unwrapped. Don't next to talk about teaching through real world problems.